Welcome back, fellow Illumineers, to be our guest. We're back! It's that time again! We came out of our shell, we went into hibernation for 3 months, and we're back again with the new set. It's that time. It's time for the draft and sealed, the limited set reviews, to get you all prepared for your release weekend events, hopefully more draft and sealed events beyond that. But at the very least, let's get you ready for those release weekend events. I'm so looking forward to this. It's a lot of work in the week that I'm going to put into it, but then I get to go to sleep for 3 months. And I have a blast doing it. It has been so rewarding over the last year plus. Seeing you all, seeing your success, seeing your stories, hearing that you're excited to go through these yourselves. So thank you all so much for that. I'm just here having fun, here goofing around. So I'm pleased that you're getting value out of it, that you're enjoying it. And hopefully we can keep it rolling. Let's just keep having fun with it. No need to take this too seriously. This is a game after all. So, what are we doing? Well, first of all, we're doing our draft and limited sealed set reviews. So we're going to go through over the coming days, and we're going to go through by ink cost. And why do we do that? Why do we separate the cards by ink cost? Because one of the most fundamental parts of building a successful limited deck is having a healthy ink curve, where you have a few ones, a few more twos, predominantly 3 and 4 costs, down 5, and even less 6+. Now, at the end of these set review videos, I'm going to give you one extra video that I haven't before, and I'm going to give you a video with kind of my general tips and tricks for a draft that will hopefully be a little evergreen, hopefully be something that you can watch again and again and refresh yourself on before each set, because it's really going to be about just limited in general, not Fabled specific, maybe not even Lorcana specific, but probably Lorcana specific. And just try to get you better prepared for beyond just how to value these cards. What else do I need to know? What else do I need to factor in order to be successful in draft, in sealed, in these limited environments? You can even, to some degree, apply it to Pack Rush. So look forward to that after the set reviews, but we're going to go through these one at a time. Now, I'm going to have special guests with me for each of these subsequent set reviews, but let's be honest, the one drops are always kind of light. So I didn't really want to bring someone on just for the sake of talking about like 2 good cards in all of the one drops. So I usually just do this one by myself. So sorry all, you're stuck with me alone for this first one. But subsequent videos, the 2 drops and above, we've got some amazing guests. We've got James from Citizens of Lorcana and the Overexerted podcast, which I'm also a part of. We've got David Nunez, a top player in this game with Team Forbidden Mountain. We've got the Rules of Villainy group. We've got Rudrose, who's an amazing ICL caster, and one of my favorite card reveal characters. And we've got Enchanted Kim, who I'm really excited to have. She specifically has been working to be more competitive recently, so I'm really looking forward to what she has to say about this limited pool. Now, I'm going to cue it to Past Heath to tell you a little bit about how we rank these cards, and then we'll dive into it. Take it away. So we're going to do A, B, C, D, F as our rating system. A is first pickable and happy to first pick it. This is a bomb or just really effective card. There are commons that are absolutely within this territory, but ultimately it's something that you're just like, you open your pack, you look at it, and you're like, yeah, this is the one for me. Love this one. Happy to have it, right? That's an A. B is, I'll first pick it, but I'm not going to be absolutely thrilled about it, but I'm definitely very happy to pick this up and have this in my deck. I will always play this card, and I'm going to kind of be picking it in the first half of the pack. C's are your, like, journeyman staples of your deck. You're almost always going to play these cards unless you've drafted so well that your deck's just crammed full of A's and B's. So you're always going to play these cards, or almost always. But you're not exactly thrilled to be taking them. You're just like, okay, these are cards that are going to fill out my deck, right? These are the cards that you want kind of in the middle to last half of the pack. and they're solid. D is, ideally I'd like to not have this in my deck. I will play this, but I'd like to not have this in my deck if I can help it, and I'm certainly not wasting any early picks on it. These are cards that you are going to be picking up because it's the only cards left in the last third of the pack, right? Ideally, these should all be inkable. If they're that bad, you should not be taking an uninkable card that's that quality, right? And then F is don't play it. And usually that's because they're uninkable and they're like D quality and uninkable. But it could also, there could be some inkable cards that I rate as S just because they're so bad. And in that case, obviously, if they're inkable and you need ink, you're going to play them in your deck because you're only eliminating 8 cards that you drafted. So if you have, 8 uninkables that are Fs, you're going to play an F that's inkable, of course, right? But you should try never to have this anywhere near your deck, and you should only be using it as ink if I've got an inkable F in there. Ugh, so succinct, so handsome. Isn't this wonderful? Thank you, Heath. All right, let's dive into it. As you can see here, we're starting with Aurora holding court. So she is an inkable 1/2, 1 lore. She's a hero and a princess. If there are 2 subtypes that matter in this set, it is hero and princess. She has the ability whenever this character quests, you may pay 1 less for the next princess or queen character you play this turn. So, we're going to see one a little bit later in Pluto that's going to apply to all characters, but he's an uninkable 0/2. Aurora is an inkable 1/2, but applies just to princesses and queens. Now, there are princesses and queens in the set. Specifically, I believe there's 25 princesses and 12 queens. Thereabouts. I might be off by 1 or 2. But that's 10% of the set. So if you draft the average, you've got probably 4 princesses in your deck, of which Aurora is 1. So you're probably not going to have another princess on turn 2 or turn 3 either. So she's not really going to be useful when you need her to be, which is she's going to be most effective and constructed when you can get out a 3-drop princess like Tiana on turn 2. Great. All right. Yes, in theory, you could shift the Aurora Dreaming Guardian 5-drop onto her on turn 2. But that's really not great. Like, yeah, for a turn or 2, it'll feel pretty solid. But then after that, she's going to be on par with everything else, and you've wasted a card to accomplish that. So, yeah, I think that ultimately she is a 1/2 body for 1, which is pretty terrible. So this is in that D territory. All right. What do we got next? We got the Queen, Regal Monarch. She's a vanilla, inkable 2/2, 1 lore. Now, these have been around since the first chapter. The 2/2 vanillas for 1. If you've watched any of my set reviews before for 1-drops, you'll know I rate these relatively high in terms of 1-drops. In terms of the set as a whole, it's probably not going to have a massive impact. But for me, I like to play a tempo game. I like to have 1-drops that are at least somewhat of consequence. And the Queen fits that bill. A 2/2 vanilla fits that bill. It's going to take out Aurora if my opponent plays something like that, right? And it's going to compete with, say, the 2-drop 3/2s or something like that. It's not great, right? It's not anything you should be drafting early, but you should be trying to pick up a couple of these, generic 1-drops the last quarter of the pack, last third of the pack. So what does that put it? That puts in that C territory, right? We talked about Pluto. So he's an uninkable 0/2, 1 lore with the ability to exert. You pay 1 less for the next character you play this turn. So another notable difference is Aurora is on quest. So you get the lore and the ability. This you have to exert for the ability instead of questing. But it applies to all your characters. But it is the same as I've always said. I often say that ramp in limited is not that effective, especially if it costs you a card. So Pluto is going to ramp you probably once, maybe twice, right? If you're on the play and your opponent does have a 1-drop, then you'll be able to do it twice. But there's a good chance you're going to do it once, and then you're going to give away an easy challenge for your opponent. My Queen's going to run into it for free, right? So am I valuing a one-time ramp for that? Like, I don't even get a permanent ink boost like 1 jump ahead. I get a temporary ink boost of 1. So, no, that's not really worth it. Again, you're going to feel good for like a turn or two because you've got a slightly bigger body out earlier. But they're going to catch up really quickly. And at that point, you've wasted a card on that. So that's an F. As you can see, the 1-drops aren't going to be terribly exciting. They usually aren't, but it's really important to go through this. This is an important exercise before you step away, being like, wow, these 1-drops are bad, and this is bad, right? 1-drops are probably going to be an important part of your deck. Not a significant part, but an important part, which is to say if you don't have at least a few of these in your deck, you might fall behind. But you don't want the bad ones either, so you need to know of this heap of midness, is at least the few nuggets of gold in this trash heap. Well, speaking of trash heap, we've got Atlantica, which is an inkable location that says characters count as +2 cost to sing songs while here. First of all, it costs 2 to move them there, so you're only an ink parody for the first song. You only get your bonus ink for the second song. And 2, there's just not a lot of good songs in the set, and singing them at a higher cost isn't really that impactful. So this would be what I would call an inkable F. I very rarely, well not very rarely, probably once or twice every ink cost, I have an inkable F, which is just so bad that I don't even want you to include it in your deck as ink, because there's no time you should ever be playing it, and I would hope that you at least have some playable or just bad, but at least it's a character with a body inkable cards in your deck. Alright, Rafiki, Mystical Fighter, is an inkable 0/2/1 lore, challenger +3, and whenever he challenges a hyena character, everyone forgets that ability is even on there because it's not relevant. I didn't even finish the sentence. It's flavor text. I'm recording this after I've recorded with our dear friend David Nunez for the 3-drops, and he talked about an ability that is irrelevant as flavor text. I'm like, I like that. I'm going to steal that. So this is effectively flavor text. So, Rafiki is just a worse Captain Hook, but he's still pretty good, right? He's still a 1-drop that could take out a 3-drop. Now, if you play him and your opponent already has a character in play, you're probably going to have to hold back on him, right? You don't really want to be taking out another 1-drop with this. You want to hold it back to your opponent quest with their 3/3 for 3, their Mickey Mouse true friend, and then trade with that. And then that becomes really good value, right? So that's where he is most effective. So you got to be a little bit patient with Rafiki, but he's going to get you good ink advantage, right? If they've got a 4/3 or a 3/3 or something like that for 3, and you could trade Rafiki into that, brilliant. Now, if you can get off a sneaky quest on the play when your opponent doesn't have a 1-drop, great. But otherwise, just hold him back. But he's still very solid for that. So I would categorize him as probably like C+ territory. C+, B-, somewhere in there. Your 1-drops, you're going to have to rank a little bit higher than, the card in a vacuum. Obviously, this is substantially worse than almost any 3-drop and most 2-drops. But for a 1-drop, he is relatively good. Olaf, we've got a couple of these. We've got the vanilla inkable 1/3/1 lore. I've always been down on these much more than the 2/2s. This is a C-, D+ territory for me. It will maybe be able to quest twice, but probably not even then. And it's definitely not trading for anything in the process. I mean, they might have a 2/1, but still, don't count on that. It's a filler card, a very filler card. I would try very hard not to have any of these in my deck. I'm being generous, giving it a C-. I'm stuck. Inkable action. Shows an exerted character kept ready at the start of their next turn. If you've spent a card on this, you're a sucker. Yes. Almost every card that's ever existed has a situation where it's good. If your opponent has a 3-lore quester, and they're about to quest for the win next turn, and you can keep them from readying, and then you win the game after, you're going to be like, wow, I'm stuck was fantastic. But you've just made up the best case scenario, which is very, 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 very rare. And for that, you have wasted a slot in your deck. So I guess this isn't quite an inkable F. There is still a very niche case scenario where it's useful, but it is a low D. Casa Madrigal, inkable location, 1 move cost, 6 willpower. At the start of your turn, if you have a character here, gain 1 lore. So you got to pay 2 one for the location, one to actually get your character in to hopefully gain a lore. The thing is, your opponent knows when you're going to gain a lore. Do you have a character there? Yes? Okay, then I probably need to get rid of it. If you don't, it can sit there for all I care. So you've got to invest the ink in order to gain the lore, and then your opponent's probably going to immediately take it out for no benefit to you other than your opponent's characters are exerted. This is what you call a free card, right? You've given your opponent a card for no investment other than exerting one or two characters. It's probably going to be two. Like, let's be honest. It's going to take two characters to take this down, but they'll be able to do it freely. So this is a D. Again, it's fringe useful in very, very, very rare circumstances. If you're completely dominating the board and you've got it in hand and you've got nothing else to play, sure. But otherwise, it should be ink. And you should try not to play it. Alright, this is going to be a contentious one. Curse Merfolk. Uninkable 0/1/2 lore. When this character is challenged, each opponent chooses and discards a card. So, if you manage to play this on turn 1, on the play, it's probably going to be very good. It's probably going to get you 4 or 6 lore before your opponent can, probably potentially even more than that before your opponent can reasonably get rid of it. And if they do it earlier, they got to discard a card. And you've gotten 2 lore out of the deal. So that's going to feel really good. But if you ever top deck this later, limited games are so often top deck battles where you run out of cards really quickly. It becomes that war of attrition where it's like who runs out of cards first and who's stuck in top deck mode first. So if you're playing this on turn 4, 5 or later, you're only ever getting 2 lore out of it, and your opponent's going to get to challenge it for free. Unless they're drawing a lot of cards, in which case they're probably winning anyway, in which case they're fine to discard one. So it's cheap, so it's not like you're wasting a huge amount of time. Chances are you don't have another play, or you play this with the 1 remaining ink you've got. So it's probably not an F, but it's very... Ugh. I don't like cards that just get you 2 lore and nothing else. No matter the cost. But if you play this early, it can be very good. I would say that this is probably a contentious one. And I could see it being just as much an F as like a C+. For me, I'm not necessarily interested in this as much. But if it's pick one, pack one, I don't know that I'm taking this that highly. But if I've already managed to draft a relatively aggressive deck, then this becomes a linchpin of that. So this is one that's really going to be... Remember Desperate Plan? Where I'm like, it really depends on how your play style is, what your deck build's like, right? If this is surrounded by a bunch of other non-aggressive characters in a slow deck, it's going to be awful. If this is surrounded by a bunch of aggressive stuff and you manage to tempo your opponent out consistently, it's going to be fantastic. So it's an F/a C plus B minus. It depends on your style. For the average player, drafting the average deck, drafting a consistent aggressive deck is a lot harder than you think. It's not just take all the 2 lore characters. I think this is probably... All right, I'm going to hedge my bets and I'm going to call it like a C. I'm going to call it a C and say it's in between the two, right? It depends on where your deck's at, what your style is like, but just be careful. It is not a slam dunk, that is for sure. Bobby Zimmerski. Spray Cheese Kid. Inkable 1/2, 1 lore. When you play this character, you may draw a card, then choose and discard a card. If you remember Mulan, I had her rated as the top 1-drop in that set. Now, it was a dearth of 1-drops in that set, but still, I said a couple things about her. One, I liked the 2/1 body because, you know, that's going to trade into your 2/2s or your 3/2s or stuff like that. So it's not a bad body. 2 strength is critical. The filtering. You probably don't want to do that on turn 1. It's probably not a true 1-drop in the sense that it's not a card that you want to play on curve on 1. You know, you probably want to play it a little bit later in the game when you maybe got an uninkable stuck in your hand, or you've got another 1-drop that is no longer relevant that you want to get rid of, right? Better to have 1 1-drop than 2, or whatever the case may be, right? The problem is he's a 1-2 instead of a 2-1. And that's not much of a difference, but it's actually all the difference. Which is to say, this isn't taking anything out other than Curse Merfolk. Right? It's just not doing anything once it's on the board. It's going to quest for 1 and then get banished. So between the filter and the quest for 1, that's not nothing, but it's hard to say that that's worth a card. It probably still is, but not by much. So I think I've got this in the C territory, and I've probably got it in here somewhere. Pegasus, gift for Hercules, inkable 1/1 lore evasive. I like this. The problem is it's banished by any other evasive character. But usually your opponent's not going to have a ton of evasive characters. So even if they might have a 2-drop or a 3-drop evasive in their deck, they might not get it on curve. So they might not see it till turn 4, 5, 6, right? So then if you've quested 3 or 4 times with this, you're feeling pretty good. And then as long as it's not Peter Pan's shadow and it doesn't have rush and you see it come out, then you can hold back on this. And if you've got any kind of increase in strength in your deck, like a Lilo or like a Megara or something like that, then maybe you can use it. Then you hold back a little bit till you've got that. They quest, and then you can use it with the buff to take out their 2-3 evasive or something like that. So, yeah. I really liked in Ursula's return when you've got the Shift Pegasus in there. We don't have that anymore. But I still think the reward far outweighs the risk with this card. You got to be smart with playing around with it. Don't just quest into it once into a 2-3 and just let it go. But you'll probably get a few lore out of it, and then maybe you can use it aggressively. I would want to actively have a couple of strength buffs in my deck with this. Knowing I have this, I'd look for those slightly higher, not significantly higher, but slightly higher in value to pair with that to hopefully then take care of my opponent's evasives if those come up. So I have this in the B territory. All right. Improvise. Chosen character gets +1 strength this turn. Draw a card. Speaking of strength buffs, not really enough or a lot, right? This will help you, Pegasus, get rid of Dumbo. But it draws a card, right? So this is where what this card essentially does is turn your deck into a 39 card deck, right? Your 40 card deck becomes 39 cards, which means that every other card comes out more consistently. So if you've got strong cards in your deck, this is going to help you get to them more reliably, more consistently. If your deck's just kind of average across the board, it doesn't really do much of anything. But sometimes 1 strength is enough, and the fact that it gets to replace itself, I like this. I'm not going to draft it super highly, but I like this. Probably in like that C+ territory. Yeah. I mean, obviously you're not playing this on 1. Probably somewhere in here. I'm going to shrink this ever so slightly. Probably somewhere in there. Could be below Rafiki, even below Curse Merfolk, above, even in the B- territory, somewhere in there. But I would say I'd be looking to get this kind of middle to late third of the pack. All right, Hidden Cove. It is an inkable location, 6 willpower, 1 move cost. Characters there get +1 strength, +1 willpower. We know it very well, paired well with Diablo. So it doesn't get you any lore, so that's an important point. But it does buff strength and willpower, and I would argue willpower probably the more important of the two, though the strength is certainly not a bad thing. Your opponents can get rid of it relatively easily, but if you're controlling the board, then this will help you absolutely dominate the board, and hopefully then give them nothing left to challenge it back. If they're forced to challenge it, not get rid of it, and you're still got your characters there to then deal with them with the Hidden Cove buff, that's your best case scenario. There's going to be times, unfortunately, where they just get rid of it. It just really doesn't have much impact. So what you would want to use this as is a trick. You'd want to use it as a mini Lilo, the new buffing character, where you play it out mid-game and dump, 3 ink into it to buff 3 of your characters. And have them kind of try and wipe the board a little bit, clean up the board. And if then that leaves your opponent with not enough characters to challenge Hidden Cove back, then we're in business, right? So this is the best case scenario. It's not going to happen every time. It's probably not even going to happen often. So as a result, it's not great, but it is certainly playable. This is one of the more playable locations that I think are in this set. Where does that categorize it as? Probably somewhere between C and D+. I think I would rather have the Queen than that. I think I'd probably rather have it more than Olaf or Bobby Zemeckis. Bobby Zemeckis? Zemeruski! Sorry. That was probably very loud. Yeah, so that would make it C- to C territory, somewhere in there. Mulan, Injured Soldier, 1 cost inkable, 2/3, 1 lore. This character enters play with 2 damage, so it's effectively a 1 cost 2/1. Now, there is a little bit of healing in this set that is useful. I don't think all healing is useful and limited, but we've got things like the Rapunzel at 2-drop, we've got Heal What Has Been Hurt, a 3-cost song, we've got Julieta, 3-cost character, that would work well with this. And also you've got the Chef Mulan. Now, she is a much higher rarity, so you're probably not going to see her. So for me, I would probably draft this as a D+, unless I've got a lot of the healing, which you probably shouldn't have that much anyway. You just don't want a ton of it, unless it's all Julietas, and then great. Or I've got the Chef Mulan. If I've got the Chef Mulan, this probably bumps up to like a C+, right? But it's probably in the D+ territory. Sergeant Tibbs, he is another vanilla 2/2, just same as the Queen. I will put him here because there is more Queen synergies than ally synergies in this set. Flounder, speaking of which, ally synergies, but it definitely Flounder goes above Sergeant Tibbs because of our friend Jared at Citizens of Lorcana. We love our Flounder. But there is more Queen synergies, so sorry, he still has to stay below the Queen. Jasmine, Heir of... I know you would have him S tier, which doesn't even exist on my list. Jasmine, Heir of Agroma. 1 cost inkable, 1/2, 1 lore. When you play this character, remove up to 1 damage from chosen character of yours. I have a lot of problems with this. Since the first chapter, when this was Timon. This is a card there's never a good time to play. If you play it early, there's nothing to heal. If you play it late, you're only healing with 1 for 1, and you're left with a 1/2 body. There are circumstances where you will heal for 1, which will allow your character to challenge another character and survive to tell the tale. Right? I have a 4/4 with 1 damage on them. You have a 3/4. We would trade normally. I heal with Jasmine. Then I can challenge in, and he survives. Great. That is the best case scenario. That's not, like, impossible to happen, but still relatively niche. Right? Most of the time, the healing's not going to matter all that much for 1. Right? So for me, she is the quintessential D+ D territory. Develop your brain. Inkable action. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck. Put 1 into your hand, the other on the bottom of your deck. This is not card draw. This is card selection. And in the average limited deck, the difference in value between 2 cards is not going to be significant. So you're probably just using this to dig a little bit deeper. And it's not dig a little deeper either. So again, much like Improvise, this is making your card a 39 card deck. But Improvise gets you +1 strength. And you would argue, well, I get to choose the best of 2 cards here. Sure. But again, the quality difference between those 2 cards is probably not going to be substantial, if at all. It might be like a 3/4 for 3 or a 4/4 for 4. It's like, cool. They're the same. They're not. 3/4 for 3 is better, but... Anyways. But these are good uses. Both Improvise and Develop Your Brain are good uses for extra ink, right? If you can't be perfectly on curve, you've got a 1 into a 2 into a 3 into a 4, but then you don't have a 5-drop. You've got another 4. Great, I've got an extra ink. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully you've built that curve out enough that we were talking about that you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even just into 6, right? 6 is probably going to be 2 3s at that point. So hopefully you don't have extra ink for a while at least. But at some point, this might be semi-useful. I don't even think it's as good as Improvise. I don't think it's as good as Rafiki. I don't even think it's as good as Curse Merfolk, maybe? I don't know. Again, Curse Merfolk is so just variable. So I'm going to put it there. Diana, another 1/3. So many vanillas. Princess has more synergies than allies, so we'll put it there. But thankfully, we've got one great card left, which is Fire the Cannons. Now, you've got to be careful about the number of uninkables in your deck. You realistically don't want to be more than 6, or even at 6. Like 4 or 5 is probably ideal. Even less than that, better, right? Don't shy away from taking uninkables, but just be careful, right? So if I'm thinking I want to have 4 or 5 by the end of 4 packs, that means I want to try and keep it to 1 uninkable that I actually plan to play per pack. So keep that in mind. But Fire the Cannons is super efficient, right? It will take care of their 1-drops, probably a good amount of their 2-drops. And it will also help you with taking care of some problematic characters that maybe got a favorable challenge on you earlier in the game. Their 5/5 ran into your 3/4 and has 2 willpower left. Yeah, you could run your 2-drop into it or your 1-drop into it, but I'd rather use this than quest with those characters, right? So Fire the Cannons, very efficient, very helpful. I'm very happy playing this and a 3-drop on turn 4, for example. I don't think it's into the A territory by any stretch. I think whether it's better or worse than Pegasus will depend on your deck. The fact that it's uninkable, I'll probably have it below Pegasus, but still in that B territory. Very efficient, very helpful. Just you got to be careful about that uninkable. And don't, oh my gosh, the Captain Hook that gets Fire the Cannons back, no. We're going to talk about this in the 4-drops, but it is definitely not worth pursuing that dream. You would need like 3 Fire the Cannons before one of those becomes playable. So, all right, that wraps it up. We want to keep it short and sweet for the 1-drops. But here we go. So focus on Pegasus, Fire the Cannons, improvise Rafiki, develop your brain, maybe Curse Merfolk, and it's all right to have some of those 2/2 vanillas in there. Try to have 4 to 6 1-drops and leave it at that. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to see you tomorrow with Jared. I have Flounder on the brain with James from Citizens of Lorcana and from the Overexerted podcast talking about our 2-drops. Thanks again very much. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.